We start this moment of prayer one more day, and before we start, I just want to clarify that I don't wear the same clothes every day. I'm doing all these videos in the same day. Just in case it was a distraction, I want to get rid of all distractions. So, well, just for you to know. And today we enter into this sacred moment, just as Moses entered into those fields and that piece of land where he had to take off his sandals because he was in a sacred place, right? In the moment when we realize we are in the presence of God, then we need to literally take off the sandals of our heart. We need to come into his presence in that spiritual nakedness, in that spiritual sincerity where we know we cannot hide anything from him, and we can just prostrate, knowing that we are never worthy of his presence, of being in his presence. And that is why we realize this is something sacred. It goes beyond any outstanding reality that I could ever imagine. Just the fact that we human persons are able to be in God's presence, that's already a huge miracle. And I'm not going to give you here a class on theology or anthropology, but just a brief explanation in case it helps, that to see the 5 levels of life that exists in this natural world we live in, like in the world, in the universe that God created. It's first, it's God, right? It's like the top and the most perfect way of life, and there's only one creature. He's not a creature, I'm saying a heresy. There's only one living being, and it's God, right? He is the omnipotent, and he is that one that abides in that level of life. And then below him there's the angels, where there's many angels. There's not only one, but there's many. And then we know they are not corporal, they're spiritual, right? And then the less perfect level of life that goes below them, it's us, the human persons, because we are spiritual, but we also are corporals. So in that way, we are more limited by the angels because of the time and space that we need to live in. And then below us, it's the animals that they have no spirit, they have no they don't have that spiritual life that we do. And then below them, the vegetation, right? All the beautiful creation that I have here behind me, and more, right? So many beautiful scenes that we can see in nature. So imagining those 5 levels of life, it's as if we were to say that a plant can all of a sudden interact with me, and that she can be aware that I am looking at her, and that she can talk to me. Like, it's 2 levels beyond the human race are the plants. So when we say that we are entering into God's presence, is something as outrageous as this. Or like, it would be closer to think, for example, I don't know, that we can have a loving dialogue with a rat. That would be even closer, but still like so far away, right? From what it means that we talk to God, because he's 2 levels above us. And not only that, like, he is the perfection and we are not perfect. His level of life is just so different from us that by itself it would imply maybe like 200 levels in between, right? And still he wanted to break that bridge, that abyss of difference between him and them, and of us. Sorry, he wanted to break that huge distance between him and us, and he became man. So he became one of us, and in that way he broke that distance, and he created like a shortcut, right? It's a little path where we arrive directly to him, and we can be in contact with him. So, well, this is something very theological. I don't want you to get distracted into many rational thoughts, but this just to bring ourselves into this awareness, and to foster gratitude in our hearts, because we take it for granted and we forget it's a miracle that we can be in His presence. So we ask God again to increase our faith, to be able to see Him in those areas of our lives where He is not visible, where He actually seems to hide. We ask Him also to increase our hope so that we can endure and we can prolong the faith throughout the time. That's how Pope Benedict defines hope, right? It's the prolongation of faith in time, and I find that definition very beautiful. And we want to prolong it because we want to keep it till the time finishes for us, that it's when we are called to our final encounter with God. And then we want to ask Him to increase love in our hearts, because after all, that's what we are made for, right? We were created for love in those both directions, to be loved and to love. And Jesus wants to pour His love into our hearts, so that's why we need to ask today and every day of our life for the increase of all those theological virtues. And today I will read this gospel that will also give us very, very beautiful reflections. It's in Matthew chapter 12, verses 1 to 8. Matthew 12, 1 to 8. Jesus was going through a field of grain on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "See, your disciples are doing what is unlawful to do on the Sabbath." He said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry, when he went into the house of God and ate the bread of offering, which neither he nor his companions, but only the priests could lawfully eat? Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests serving in the temple violate the Sabbath and are innocent? I say to you, something greater than the temple is here. If you knew what is meant, 'I desire mercy, not sacrifice,' you would not have condemned these innocent men, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." And with this passage, I just think of so many stories we have heard, right, of people that live their faith in a very spotless way. Like they are so faithful to all the commandments and to all the prescriptions and all the rules, and they know maybe the catechism by heart, and they know all the messages of Our Lady of Medjugorje, and they try to apply them, and they pray all these novenas, and they really kill themselves to reach that happiness and to reach that love we are called to live. And still, if we were to ask them honestly, deep down in your hearts, are you happy? How many of those people would actually have to confess, no, I'm not happy? And I don't understand why, because I am faithful. And they truly are, right? And here I throw this question, like, are you happy, dear missionaries? Do you consider that your heart is fulfilled with all that joy that God has promised to all who believe in Him? Do you think that you have enjoyed that beatitude, right? And maybe, of course, we know that perfect joy will never be reached here in life, because if not, what would the difference be between an earthly life and a heavenly life, like the one that we are all longing for and the one we are all called to live after we die, right? But yes, we can long for this kind of happiness that God actually wants to give to us. So are you happy? And if not, what is going on? Maybe it also happens to you that you are so faithful and you try to obey your parents and you try to do everything right, and you always get A+, and you always are there for your friends, and you're always self-giving in this like really selfless way, and still there's something missing in your heart. And those things, those longings are the ones that you have to bring to prayer. That's what prayer is meant for, right? It's not just a moment for you to fulfill another obligation. Prayer is not an obligation. Prayer comes from the desire of your heart and from the desire of the heart of Jesus that we saw yesterday, right? How he is so thirsty for our company and for our consolation, and we are also so thirsty. So when we come to prayer, we should have in mind this analogy that I'm going to tell you. Imagine that you were a mother, right? I imagine none of you have kids. If not, you wouldn't be a missionary, I am assuming, right? So imagine you are a mother and you have this little baby and you are still nursing him. And you know how babies are, they have like a little internal clock that knows what should happen every single second, right? And so the moms get used to that clock and they know 9 a.m. time to feed my baby, right? And 9:01 he's already like crying because something is going on, like it was time 1 minute ago. So the mom already knows the perfect schedule of their baby. So imagine that you are that mom that already knows it's time to feed your baby. So you bring your baby and you start trying to nurse him and he's like, no, I don't want, right? And you're like, oh, maybe he's growing, maybe he got hiccups, something happened, okay, I'll come in some minutes, right? And then you come back and he doesn't want to eat still. So wow, that's weird, like maybe he ate something without me noticing, but how he's not able, like. So you wait 1 hour and you wait 2 hours and he just does not want to eat. And you start getting worried because you know that if he doesn't eat, he's gonna die of starvation. He needs to eat, right? So then you have a big problem there because he doesn't want, and how can you force him? Well, if you're a good mother, then you will realize there's actually two problems. The first problem is that he's gonna die of starvation. So you need to solve that problem. So then even if he doesn't want, poor baby, you just like stick it in and okay baby, like you have to eat because you have to eat and you almost suffocate him, but you better eat, right? So you force him and somehow you manage to get that food into his system. And okay, the first problem is solved, but there is another problem. And the big and the main problem is that he doesn't want to eat when he was meant to eat. So then you have to take him to the doctor and you have to be very honest with the doctor and you have to show him how the baby doesn't want to eat, right? In spiritual life, the same thing happens. One thing is how we fulfill the laws and the commandments, right? And if we don't fulfill them, we die of starvation. If we don't go to Sunday Mass, for example, we die of starvation. That's why Jesus forces us to go, not because he's this greedy. I've said it several times. It's not that he wants to make us suffer and he wants to ruin our Sunday that was supposed to be a lazy day, and he just wants to bug us and just like make our lives miserable. No, like he knows how much we need the Eucharist. So he says, well, I wish they could go every day to Mass, but at least once a week so that they can barely survive, right? And many Christians, many Catholics survive that way. Many because they don't have other option, they don't have the time or the means, right? When you go to missions, especially in countries of Latin America, you see that sometimes people have to walk miles and miles to get to the Sunday Mass and then go back to work, right? But so well, let's say that you are not hungry for Mass, but still you go. Great. You accomplished, you fulfilled your first need. But there's another need that is the most important. Why is it that you are not thirsty for Mass? Why is it that you are not longing for prayer sometimes? Why is it that you see it more as a burden than as a consolation, than as the means to survive throughout the week? Why is it that sometimes our spiritual commitments, we see them more as a burden, as a pain in the neck, instead of seeing them as the delight and the consolation and the rest that we need, right? if we don't see them like that, there is a problem that we need to solve. It's not enough to just like stick in the food and okay, I'll just do it, and then I put a check mark in my to-do list. But spiritual life goes beyond. And maybe when you limit your spiritual life to just put check marks, that's what happens. You're not happy. And that's what Jesus is talking about in this gospel. He's saying, you're perfect in completing the rules, right? But you forget that what I want is mercy and not sacrifice. What he wants is your love, not your to-do list perfectly accomplished with all the check marks. He could care less about that check mark, right? Still, he knows you need it. So I'm not saying that it doesn't matter if you don't go to Mass. Of course it matters, but it matters for you, not for him. You are the one that needs it, not him. He is the one that wants to give you those gifts. And when you find yourself with that lack of thirst, that's where you have to go to Jesus and tell him, Jesus, I don't want to be with you. I hope you're honest enough to just go and tell him, Jesus, I'm sorry. I know it sounds horrible. Like, how would I feel if my boyfriend all of a sudden comes to me and tells me, so-and-so, I don't want to be with you. Like, that's so boring, right? How would you feel? Of course, it's horrible. And I hope your boyfriend never tells you that. But with Jesus, let's say it's a little bit different, because he will not get mad. He will not get offended. He will just hug you and tell you, don't worry. Don't worry, sweetheart, right? I will take care of that. As long as you come every day, as long as you show me that you want to want, then I will take care of that. So show Jesus how much you want to desire him. When you don't desire him, tell him, Jesus, I don't desire to be with you, but I want to desire. Because you don't want my sacrifice, you want my love, you want my mercy. And you are the source of mercy. So if I don't come to you, my fountain of love will dry. It will just dry up, right? So we have to go to him once and again to ask him to set that flame and fire in our hearts, so that we don't conform with simply, go and I do my commitments and mission accomplished, and now what? That must be such a burden to live like that. So today, dear missionaries, this was more a reflection than a moment of prayer, but I hope it gives you some food for thought and for prayer. So I would recommend you to take some time to pray to Jesus and tell him, Jesus, I want to live with you, and I don't want to live by the law. I want to live from the bottom of my heart. I want my life to have sense, and it can only make sense when all what you do comes really from the depths of your heart, right? So ask Jesus to fill your heart with all those beautiful desires, with all the passion for the mission, for all the beautiful challenges that you will have in your missionary year. You know that there's so many people praying for you. There's all the saints that are also accompanying you. So when you feel that your well is drying, don't get discouraged and don't stop going to Jesus. See the example that all those saints have given you, and they are just like shouting, if they could, like from heaven, when they see that you are starting to fail and to say, whatever, today I'm not going to pray. They are there telling you, no, keep going, like just go to the chapel. Today you will receive a special grace. Even if your senses don't notice it, you will receive a special grace. Just know, dear missionaries, that the consecrated women, especially the ones that are involved in this training course, are praying for you. So please, right now when you stop this video, go to pray, and also pray for us. Pray that we can all be saints and that we can work together, as we will eventually work together, right? Pray that we can build the kingdom of Christ wherever he is sending you, that you can touch many souls through, and you can give them all those treasures that you will receive through these moments of prayer.